Do you ever wonder why a lot of very talented musical performers never seem to make it to superstar status? Well, I have a few answers. Not everybody is lucky enough to be able to just stand up on a stage and sing year after year and become an icon without the public becoming bored. Having talent will not make you successful. But having talent, creativity, along with hard work, is a step in the right direction. Here's a list of nostalgic performers that I put together who decided to reinvent themselves without social media, only the help of radio, television appearances, and for some, not all, videos. Welcome back to the House of Nostalgia. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Elvis Presley recorded his first album in 1956. That's the same year he made his first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. In the late 50s, Hollywood called and he answered. He starred in 33 movies between 1957 and 1972. Elvis never abandoned his music career while doing these movies, and his albums and movie soundtracks were still selling. But he was a musician, and around the late 60s, Elvis made his comeback to his musical roots, which was his first love, singing and performing. On December the 3rd, 1968, Elvis appeared in his televised concert on NBC wearing his iconic black leather suit made by costume designer Bill Ballou. These costumes that Ballou made for Elvis were amazing. He went from superstar status to icon. He recorded 24 studio albums and 17 movie soundtracks. It was genius of him to wear those costumes during public appearances, and that look will forever be etched in our minds. Elvis is a multiple Hall of Fame winner, and he is a legend. Liberace was born in 1919. He was a child prodigy who started playing the piano as early as the age of 3. His rise to the top did not happen overnight. He learned early on that using gimmicks in his stage shows, such as interacting with his audience, dressing immaculately, paying attention to details, and standing out from other piano performers would be his key to success. By 1945, Liberace added the candelabrum as his permanent trademark. He began playing on pianos customized with mirrors and rhinestones. He starred in movies and had his own television show. By the early 60s, his career took a dive. After surviving a near-death experience, Liberace decided to return to Vegas and take his performance full glam and decadence with extravagant costumes, piano, and being escorted on and off the stage in a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce. He became an icon. The last movie made about Liberace, Behind the Candelabra, focused mostly on the part of his life that he fought to protect. He was a very talented piano player, but at times it seemed as though his extravagant style and showmanship overshadowed his musical talents. How many albums did Liberace actually record? Well, nobody can quite pinpoint an accurate number. But nevertheless, he will always be remembered in history as a great entertainer. He is a legend, and he was inducted into the Keyboard Magazine Hall of Fame. Jimi Hendrix recorded several albums, but his last 4 is the most known to the public. He was a trendsetter whose look style was recreated by Prince, Michael Jackson, and Lenny Kravitz, just to name a few. His guitar performances inspired many musicians, but sometimes it can be one performance that make you an icon overnight. During Hendrix's early years as a sessions musician and band member, his performance look was more like one of the Temptations. Around 1966, Hendrix decided to dress more along the style of the psychedelic times during the mid-60s and early 70s. Hendrix's 1969 solo guitar performance of the Star-Spangled Banner made him an icon overnight. Rolling Stone magazine lists 3 of Jimi Hendrix songs as their 100 greatest guitar songs of all time: Purple Haze, Machine Gun, and Voodoo Child. Before Jimi, many musicians never heard anyone ever make a guitar cry and sound like a battlefield. For all the audience members who stayed for that performance, will never forget the experience, and for those who left, they will forever regret it. He is a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and he is a legend. When Madonna performed Like a Virgin at the 1984 MTV Music Awards, rolling around on the floor in a wedding gown, she instantly became a star. Her first 1983 album, Madonna, had the breakout hit Like a Virgin, and it went to number 1. Between 1985 and 1990, she did 3 tours for 3 albums, which amounted to 134 shows. One of her most memorable periods of her career was the Blonde Ambition Tour, with the iconic classic Torpedo Bra designed by Jean-Paul Gaultier, which was hailed as one of her most famous tours. She has done 12 tours in all. Her biggest boost was the importance of her connecting with her audience through her music. She kept pushing her music and different iconic looks out there and giving her fans what they wanted from her. Madonna is also a dancer, songwriter, and actress. She starred in numerous movies such as Desperately Seeking Susan in 1985, her 1991 documentary movie Truth or Dare, and her 1992 movie A League of Their Own, just to name a few. In 1992, Madonna, along with 2 other founders, opened Maverick Entertainment. Her hard work, talent, and creativity drove her career to the top, and she was named the Queen of Pop. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007. Madonna recorded 14 studio albums, and she was one of the musical guests to perform at the legendary 1985 Live Aid concert that raised money for famine relief in Africa. Prince was introduced to the R&B genre of music in 1978 with the album For You. It wasn't until his 3rd album, Dirty Mind, that Prince decided that he would no longer be ignored. Appearing and performing in a bikini and trench coat, Prince was becoming the talk of the industry. He became an international icon during the success of the Purple Rain movie and album soundtrack, which became a cult classic. A big part of his success, along with his talent, was not to do interviews, which made him a bit mysterious. But later in his career, he talked a lot, almost to the point where you felt like he was holding things in for years. Prince's style was amazing. He basically chose a new style for every phase of his career, and that's a lot. His music career lasted over 30 years, and he didn't seem to age at all. He was the first artist to take on the record label in an unconventional way by wearing the word slave on his face and using a symbol as his stage name. The shows he appeared in scrambled to come up with the name artist formerly known as Prince. His Dove's Cry look and name was an ode to Jimi Hendrix, One of Hendrix's greatest songs of all times is The Wind Cries Mary, and Hendrix's tour was called The Cry of Love. Prince changed the sound of music in the 80s and changed it again in the 90s. He was one of the first recording artists to warn the music industry years earlier about downloading being the future of buying music. The industry lost over billions of dollars not getting on top of this issue, and honestly, it's not under control now. He is a 2004 Hall of Fame winner. He upstaged the whole show. Prince recorded 24 studio albums, and he is a legend. After Bowie's third album, The Man Who Sold the World, in the early 70s, Bowie decided to come up with the iconic Ziggy Stardust character. This new character seemed to fit in with the up-and-coming androgynous glam rock style and music which was taking shape in the early 70s. During this time, his band was called the Spiders from Hell. They recorded The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. The album and tour was hugely successful and quickly made Bowie a star. By the mid-70s, he took on the persona of the character the Thin White Duke, and he had his first #1 song in the United States called Fame from the Young American album. The song Fame was a crossover hit, and Bowie was the first white artist to appear on Soul Train. By the late 70s, Bowie became an immaculate stylish dresser. He brought in the 80s dressed as an iconic clown in the 1980 song Ashes to Ashes. Another highlight was his collaboration with Queen for 1981 hit song Under Pressure. His hit songs go on and on, along with his Serious Moonlight tour. He recorded 27 studio albums and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1996. We found out in the 90s that David Bowie was an artist. He kept that to himself for years. A lot of his costumes are on display at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. His career spanned 50 years. He is iconic and he is a legend. Janet is the youngest of the talented Jackson family. She performed with her family in their 1976 television show, The Jacksons. In her early career, Janet started out acting on shows like Good Times, Fame, and Different Strokes. In 1982, she recorded her first album, Janet Jackson, and her sound ranged from pop rock and R&B. Her 1986 album, Control, is when she teamed up with producers and songwriters Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. The album garnered 7 chart-topping hits. She learned early in her career that the use of choreography in her music videos made her stand out, and this was as early as 1986. She continued the dance moves throughout her career and became a heavyweight performer and an icon in her own right, not having to depend on her older talented brothers. Her tours were amazing works of art with her vibrant costume changes, choreography, and audience participation. Her 1993 Janet World Tour lasted for 2 years. Now, did she have to do that? Absolutely not. That's why she's on this list. You will never become an icon being lazy and relying on nepotism and not putting in the work. In 1993, she played the title role and the love interest of the late Tupac Shakur in the late John Singleton classic, Poetic Justice. Janet would always seem to gain weight during her downtime and reappear slim and ready to work, which was a form of reinvention. She recorded 11 studio albums and counting, and she is a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and Janet is an icon. To call this next British artist an icon seems a little lackluster because the title is not really enough compared to all the work that he put in his career. Elton has won 11 Grammys. His talent is absolutely amazing. His videos were nice. He was not a dancer, but his amazing talent and performances was able to capture his audience and keep his career on top for over 55 years. He adopted the glam rock look in the early 70s with outrageous costumes that he continued to wear during performances throughout the 90s. Elton John recorded his first album in 1969 called Empty Sky, but it wasn't until his big 1973 crossover album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, that the world was starting to know who he was. Elton also appeared on Soul Train in 1975, and in 1976, he had a big crossover hit, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, with Kiki D. In 1985, he did a collaboration with Gladys Knight, Stevie Wonder, and Dionne Warwick to help raise money for AIDS research with the hit song That's What Friends Are For. In 1997, he was asked to perform Candle in the Wind at Princess Diana's funeral. Candle in the Wind was first recorded in 1973. The song was rewritten in 1997 for Princess Diana's funeral. Elton recorded 30 studio albums. He is a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and he is an icon. Tina Turner was considered an icon by most after the performance of her River Deep in 1966. The reason why she is on this list is due to her reinventing herself later in her career and became one of the biggest rock and roll stars of the mid-80s and early 90s. She recorded 4 solo albums before she hit with Private Dancer. The song What Love's Got to Do With It went number 1 on Billboard, and she was 44 years of age. Her look was of course more modern than her vintage look from the 60s and early 70s. The public was ready for her, and she was more than ready for the public. Her life story was told on the big screen with Angela Bassett and Lawrence Fishburne playing her and Ike. Tina played the Acid Queen in the 1975 movie cult classic Tommy, and she played Auntie Entity in the Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. She performed in 7 tours after Private Dancer, and she is a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and given the title by many, Queen of Rock and Roll. After the success of Michael's 1979 solo Off the Wall album, the world was introduced to the reinvention of his career. The high water pants and white socks became his trademark look. The 1982 release of Thriller changed his life forever. He became a crossover superstar. He was able to dominate the R&B charts along with the pop charts. We were introduced to his red jacket look that basically became a phenomenon. The Victory Tour with the Jacksons in 1984 added to all the hysteria that goes along with the superstar lifestyle. It would take 5 years before the release of his next album, but the public wasn't patiently waiting. We started seeing Michael Jackson impersonators, photos of Bubbles the Chimp. The world was becoming obsessed with his life. By the release of Michael's 1987 Bad album, he had become an icon. His music was breaking records and he was given the crown as the king of pop. A lot of rumors began to circulate about the pop star. The song Leave Me Alone was sort of an answer to all the rumors that were being said about him, including the rumors of him sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber. He was a trendsetter, and his look seemed to change with each video. The long-awaited 1991 Dangerous album drew a lot of attention to Michael's physical appearance in his black and white video. The album went straight to #1 on the charts. His style of dress for the video was a more youthful, casual look. By 1993, his life and career would be changed forever due to accusations that plague him throughout the remainder of his life. He released 2 more albums, 1995's History, Past, Present, and Future, Book 1, that went to #1, and he started sporting a foreign military look, reminiscent of the 1967 British look. The 2001 Invincible album had its first dip in sales since the Thriller album, but the album went platinum, but it did not make diamond status. Michael Jackson was able to hold the world's attention for over 20 years as a solo artist. His talent, style choices, and slick videos took his career to icon and legendary status. He recorded 10 solo albums in his career, and he was a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. Thank you guys so much for watching this video on musical artists that reinvented themselves for superstar and icon status.